In 1803, the body of a death row inmate in London suddenly opened its eyes in full view of the public. This is not a horror novel, but an autopsy scene at the Royal College of Surgeons. Scientist Giovanni Ardini had just connected an electrode to the body of death row inmate Foster, and an electric current flowed through the victim's jaw, causing tremors and facial muscles to contort, forcing one eye to open. When the electrode touched his torso, he even waved his arm as if struggling to wake up from the abyss of death. Aldini is not a sorcerer in the martial arts world. As the nephew of anatomist Cavani, he inherited not only his uncle's mantle, but also a groundbreaking ambition to knock on the door of death's confinement with electricity. More than 10 years ago, his uncle accidentally discovered on the dissecting table that electric current could cause a dead frog leg to suddenly twitch, proposing the animal electric hypothesis that life itself is an internal electric current. Now, my nephew is going to complete this ultimate experiment on a human corpse. Although this thick performance failed to resurrect the condemned, it truly tore apart the darkness that had shrouded death for thousands of years. The eyes. He declared to the world that death may not be the ultimate judgment of soul wandering, but a physical process that can be observed, intervened, and even briefly reversed. This discovery brought about the deepest nightmare of the 19th century. Since the deceased can be awakened by electric shock, will doctors break the fear of death and the fear of being buried alive like a plague? Craftsmen racked their brains to invent a device for safe observation materials in the northward migration of soil. They installed ventilation pipes for the coffin, and there was also a rope connecting the wrist of the corpse to the ground bell. The logic is simple. If you wake up underground with a gentle pull, you can send the last cry for help to the human world. This seemingly absurd invention accurately captures the dilemma of that era, and the boundary between life and death is so narrow. The medical revolution of the 20th century completely disrupted this boundary. In 1960, modern cardiopulmonary resuscitation was officially diagnosed, and through chest compressions, people with cardiac arrest can be pulled back from the threshold of death. Subsequently, the scene of external defibrillation gas reviving the dead was repeatedly staged in the hospital. Death is no longer a definite verdict, but a medical emergency that can be intervened and delayed. But the real challenge followed, as the invention of ventilators created an unprecedented form of life. The patient's brain function had been completely lost, but the machine could still drive the heart to continue beating. Is he still alive? In 1967, the world's first heart transplant surgery pushed this issue to the ethical cliff. To transplant a healthy heart, you must first make it stop beating. This forces the medical community to answer what death is. 4 years later, Harvard Medical School provided a groundbreaking answer: brain death. When irreversible and permanent loss of brain function occurs, even in the heart and lungs, it should be considered as death in the legal sense. The determination of death has shifted from a warm heart to a silent brain for the first time. But the real battlefield is still at a deeper microscopic level. At the beginning of the 20th century, Nobel laureate Carroll claimed that he would. A piece of basal cultured heart tissue has a normal lifespan of over 30 years in vitro. This immortal movement makes people believe that cells are essentially immortal, and aging is only caused by environmental degradation. However, myths are ultimately myths. In 1961, microbiologist Hayflick discovered that normal human cells would automatically stop dividing after about 50 times. This Hayflick extreme declares that life has a built-in countdown from the beginning. So what is this countdown device? The answer is hidden at the end of the chromosome. Scientists have discovered that there are protective sequence openings called telomeres at each end of chromosomes. With each cell division, telomeres wear down and shorten slightly, like plastic caps carrying both ends. When telomeres are short enough to no longer protect chromosomes, cells will stop dividing and move towards decay. But there are always exceptions in nature, and cancer cells seem to have broken free from these shackles. Most cancer cells activate a substance called telomerase, which continuously repairs the telomeres of the millstone, thus gaining vitality. The ability. 1951, African-American woman Lacus passed away from cervical cancer, and doctors took his cancer cell tissue for cultivation without her knowledge. Surprisingly, these cells demonstrated unprecedented vitality in the laboratory, capable of infinite division and eternal aging. This is the first human immortal cell line, the HeLa cell line. For more than 70 years, they have been transported to global laboratories and made immortal contributions to polio vaccine, gene map, and even COVID-19 research. Although Lacus passed away, his cells gained immortality in another form. Even more astonishing is that death is not always a bad thing for life. In 1972, scientists discovered a programmed suicide ritual initiated by cells and named it apoptosis in frustration. This is not an accident, but a part of the blueprint for life design. In embryonic development, it is the orderly apoptosis of interstitial cells that carves out our flexible 5 fingers. The tail of tadpoles also disappears through large-scale cell apoptosis and ultimately undergoes metamorphosis. Become a frog. Subsequently, scientists found the gene switch that controls this self-destruct program in tiny organisms like nematodes, and they are remarkably similar to homologous genes in humans. When scientists can manipulate the life clock of cells like a clock, an ancient idea resurfaces. Can we artificially delay aging and even overcome death? In 1993, the new West Asian Ken sheep doubled their lifespan by altering a gene in the nematode's body. This discovery ignited the spark of modern anti-aging research. From calorie restriction to targeted drugs, scientists have discovered that aging is not an unshakable iron law, but a set of biological programs that can be intervened. This wave has even attracted tech giants in Silicon Valley, who have invested heavily to establish companies attempting to crack NVIDIA with the same mindset as cracking software. More radical gamblers have set their sights on the future. In 1967, after the death of psychology professor Bedford from cancer, he became the first person in the world to be protected by a cryogenic freezer. His body was injected with antifreeze and sank. Waiting for a distant resurrection in a liquid nitrogen tank at -196°C is the ultimate gamble, betting that the speed of human technological progress can outperform the slow decay of the body in low temperatures. But others have even further ideas. Since the body will eventually decay, why not scan and upload consciousness and memory in their entirety to the cloud to achieve digital immortality? With the development of the times, the means by which humans fight against death are constantly changing. But we seem to have overlooked a more fundamental question. Why do humans fight against death? We always say that death is the engine of evolution, freeing up space and resources for the new generation. But looking back at history, every great leap of humanity has been a fierce challenge to the laws of nature. From farming with fire, deciphering genes, to space programs. We become ourselves precisely because we are not satisfied with the boundaries of nature. We use all our wisdom to extend the length of life, perhaps not out of fear of nothingness, but from a desire for infinite possibilities. When our ancestors first looked up at the stars, the curiosity that transcends oneself is no different from our desire to edit aging and upload consciousness today. Overcoming death may not be the end of the story, but rather the true beginning of humanity as a species, breaking free from the cradle of biology and embarking on the next civilization. But no matter what era, for every individual, we are not facing the question of why to live, but how to live. We are not heading towards death. We ourselves contain death. So death gives life and boundaries. And within these boundaries lies our stories and landscapes that transcend life and death.